Yeah. Recording in progress. How's everybody doing? Fine, I hope. We're ready for another adventure for someplace else in the world, new culture. Okay, fantastic. If I look my trusty calendar here, we're going to be doing Islam today, and this is scheduled for July the 19th, 2021. So again, we'll be touching on the beginnings of Islam and the specific tenets of Islam. So hopefully you find this to be interesting. Okay. Okay, so let's see where we can get into here. All right. Okie dokie. So where are we gonna go? To the material. Did we jump the material so far? Well, let me minimize myself here as usual. Flip. Okay. That's minimized. We go here. From the beginning. Uh-oh. What happened here? Let's see how I can work this baby. I still should be able to get back. There we go. Okay, so again, we're in World Civilizations 2. Hopefully you took my class last quarter with 1 and enjoyed it. And that's why you hooked up for 2. So I won't mention the bottom where it says week 2. I have to emphasize that the date. So this is for July the 19th, 2021. Okay. All right. Let's get into this information. All right, there we go with the caption, Islam. In the Arabian town of Mecca, late in the 6th century, an individual was born who founded a religion that is now embraced by about 1/5 of the world's population. That's a lot. Muhammad created a faith that spread with incredible speed from his native land throughout the Near and Middle East. Carried on the strong swords of his followers. Swords, don't forget that. It was carried by swords. They did a lot of conquering of folks. And later through conversions, which just about anybody else does, Jewish or Christian, Hindu, Islam became a major rival to Christianity in the Mediterranean basin and to Hinduism and Buddhism in East and Southeast Asia. So we read about that last week, which I won't say which because it might be on their midterm test, but either the north or the south of India was constantly attacked by Islamic raiders, and they got their influence in there eventually. So like on the test, make sure you know if it was the north or the south. So like I said, to Hinduism and Buddhism in East and Southeast Asia. Like these faiths, Islam was far more than a supernatural religion, which means, like any type of faith, for people to believe in God, there's no photo of him and he's not here. So it's got supernatural powers that you have to believe in through other methods, like maybe you witnessed a miracle or certain things that you believe, right? For example, if you're a real science person, people believe that the earth was made by the Big Bang, just some random space explosion, and all the elements of life that we have here on Earth, from oceans with fish and insects and humans and mammals, and they just by accident came out through all these things, right? But if you believe in God in a supernatural, then you say, no, I tend to see his, God's hand in the making of certain people. How can these things just be done? So people are on both sides of the board, right? Because some people just don't believe in God. And, hey, show me a picture, show me proof, and then I'll believe. So there you go, supernatural. Like these faiths, Islam was far more than a supernatural. Again, it has created a culture and a civilization. So see that this religion has created a culture and a civilization. Unlike the United States, where we separate religion from the government, countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran, the religion runs the government. You cannot, as my friend that used to live in Iran, which is a Muslim country, you cannot go against Muslim tenants because you can be put in jail. You can do anything you want here against Christianity, nothing will happen to you. But over there, it's a mix, right? Or actually, it's in charge of the government. Okay. The life of Muhammad the Prophet. So prophet is a person that will tell you of the future and tell you of good things, or as the Christians say, of the good news. The founder of Islam was born into a people about whom little documentary information exists prior to when he made them spiritual and political center of a new civilization. So there you go again, not only spiritual like a church or what Islam calls a mosque, but a political center just as well. Arabia is a large and sparsely, which means few, settled peninsula extending from the Fertile Crescent in the north to well down the coast of Africa. Mecca, Muhammad's birthplace, was an important interchange where Southern Asian and African goods coming across the Indian Ocean and narrow Red Sea were transferred to caravans for shipment farther east. Considerable traffic also moved up and down the Red Sea to the ancient cities of the Near East and the Nile Delta, which is the watery area, it's a delta. For these reasons, the Mecca of Muhammad's time was, so, you know, we're at the bottom of the page there. Let me read my sidebar, which again, I don't ask questions from the sidebar. It's just for your, what's the old way to say it? Illumination, right? So for your education. 570 to 632, the life of Muhammad. It was his lifespan. So that's 62 years. 640s, conquest of Persian Empire, which is the present day Iran, and Egypt completed. So both countries. And again, conquest. They didn't say, hi, do you want to become Islamic and do what, you know, say and share? It's like they fought. 661 to 750, Umayyad dynasty at the Damascus. 711 to 733, conquest of Spain. 732, Charles Martel and the Franks defeat Muslims at Tours, which is in France. And 750 to 1258, Abbasid dynasty of Baghdad. So, you know, when we get to the bottom of the page, folks, I always got to ask you a question, right? Let's get to it. Okay, whiteboard, pencil. So start with a real easy question. Oh, I misspelled Muhammad's name. Okay, when, where, and when was Muhammad born? Okay. So this is a two-parter. This is a good practice for you because a lot of times I ask a two-part sentence on the test and that 90-something% of the students only answer one of the questions. So I can't give them the full credit, right? So tell me where. So please don't, my funny guys, please don't say he was born in K-Town by the 7-Eleven on 7th Street. Don't say that. And then when. So give me the time frame. You know, I don't think it states the exact time because there wasn't documentation. They don't know, but you can say the era, right? What year span. So go ahead. Let me give you a few on that. Again, I hope everybody's doing well with the heat wave. Okay, that should be enough time for that. Let me get the eraser. Right, again, repeating, where and when was Muhammad born? Not K-Town and not 1977 during the disco period, okay? Thank you. Now let's attempt to go back to the material. Okay, we ended here at the bottom. The Mecca of Muhammad's time was. Okay, here's a nice photo here showing you the extent of the Islamic territory at the time of Muhammad's death, their expansion between these times. So Arabia, where they started in Mecca, his hometown. This is Iran, Persia, Turkestan, Syria, Damascus, a lot of places, right? Look at over here. Of course, like I said, they went to Spain, up through Morocco, which is an Islamic country. So it says here, the lightning-like spread of the new faith throughout a belt on both sides of the equator. About 1/3 of the world's population, known to be Christian, converted to Islam in the space of a long lifetime, 630 to 720, 90 years. Considering the direction of Islam's expansion, follow the arrows, what seem to be factors that prevented its further expansion? And we will learn about that. Okay, back to the reading. So it said Mecca was a cosmopolitan place with Egyptians, Jews, Greeks, and Africans living there alongside the local Arab population. Long accustomed to trading and living with the foreigners, the Arabs of towns like Mecca were using a written language and had well-developed systems of tribal and municipal governments. In such ways, the Arabs of the cities near the coast were far more advanced than the Bedouins, nomads of the vast desert interior. So a lot of people just here in the West, we hear about the Bedouins, the nomads, the people that live in the desert and ride camels, but they're talking about the people from Mecca being coastal people and were far more advanced. Several tribes or clans inhabited Mecca. The most important was Qura, and which is actually spelled Quraysh. The most important clan into which Muhammad was born about 570. According to traditional Muslim accounts, the first 40 years of his life were uneventful, which means nothing was happening. So he was orphaned, which means his parents gave up on him. Okay. And by the time he was 6 years old, his paternal uncle reared him and gave him the traditional protection of his clan. He married Khadija, a rich widow, and set himself up as a caravan trader of moderate means. The marriage produced 6 children, only one of whom survived, a daughter named Fatima. Okay, I'm going to step away for a minute because I'm going to do a big sneeze and I don't want it on the camera. So I'll be back. I'm going to do a sneeze. Okay, I did my sneeze. I don't want anybody to hear that. Okay. So, boy, it sounded like a camel. On with the show here. Around 1610 CE, Muhammad began having mystical experience or visions that took him the form of visits from a supernatural messenger. For days at a time, he withdrew into the low mountains near Mecca, where long trances ensued or continued, in which the archangel Gabriel began telling him of the one true God, Allah, and warning him of a coming day of judgment. For about 3 years, he dared speak of these visions only to his immediate kin. Kin is an old word for family, right? Yes, sir. So now we'll head on to patterns of belief, okay, in Islamic doctrine. What message did Muhammad preach that found such ready acceptance? Doctrines of Islam, the word means submission. Yes. You know, you hear a lot of people, not Western people, America. Like I worked with some lady and she was not a Muslim at all. And I remember she always said, oh, Islam is a religion of peace. And then you talk to true Islamic people and they'll tell you, no, first and foremost, it's a religion where you have to submit to God or Allah. You have the submission is what it's about. Okay. And that's what it says here. The doctrines of Islam, the word means submission, in this case to God or Allah, are the simplest and most readily understood of any of the world's major religions. They are laid out in the written form in the Quran, which is the Islamic Bible, which are the most sacred scriptures of the Muslim world, which the third caliph, Uthman, see the Umayyad dynasty section, ordered to be collected from the oral traditions 23 years after the prophet's death. Okay. Okie dokie. So we're at the bottom. You know, I got to ask another question. Back to the whiteboard. Get the pencil. Another keep it simple question. Very simple. I think last week's was a little tougher, but you know, trying to be kind, just getting to learn the important stuff here so you can remember it easily. So question 2, who is the one true God for the Muslims? And I think I just touched on that. So go ahead, let me give you a minute on that. Keeping it nice and simple. All right, should have enough time for that. Let me grab the eraser. Repeating, who is the one true God for the Muslims? Okay, all right. Back to the material. We ended up here on the bottom, the prophet's death. All right, now we shall proceed. The basic ideas are expressed in the 5 pillars of Islam. 5 pillars. which are described in the patterns of belief box. Without doubt, the simplicity of these teachings and their ritual requirements were important factors in winning many converts to Islam as the Islamic empire expanded. In the first instance, through the sword. Yes. Muhammad and his followers were able to achieve what they did for various reasons. First, Muhammad preached a straightforward doctrine of salvation, which means, going to heaven, ensured by a God who never failed and whose will was clearly delineated, which means showed, in comprehensible principles and commands. Second, those who believed and tried to follow Muhammad's words, as gathered a few years after his death in, again, their holy book, what would be considered the Islamic version of the Bible, the Quran, were assured of reward in the life to come, heaven. On the other hand, God's messenger warned unbelievers of a fiery end, which means burning in hell, just like what Christians preached, and that awaited them in hell. Okay. Finally, Muhammad's preaching contained large measures, you could say doses, amounts of elevated yet attainable. That's pretty good. Attainable, which means you can reach it, not unattainable. You have to be a saint, right? Moral and ethical code. So ethical code are things that you should do, right? Like you shouldn't steal, covet thy neighbor's wife or what have you. It appealed deeply to a population that wanted more than the purely ritualistic animist doctrine, which is kind of like a basic life belief that most people around the world started with, like, I believe in the mountain or the tree or the wolf or the bear. So this religion could give them more than that, but were repelled or disgusted by the internal conflicts of Christendom, or unsympathetic to the complexities of Judaism. These religions came before Islam. His insistence that he was not an innovator, but the finalizer of the message of the Jewish and Christian prophets and gospel writers was also of great significance in the success of his religion amongst the Eastern peoples. Pretty straightforward, like they said. Okay, so I'm at the bottom of this page, so you know what's coming up. Might as well get to it. Okay, grab the pencil. Question 3. Am I keeping it straightforward on this one? Yeah, pretty easy stuff. Okay. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Where are Islam's basic ideas spread? This is probably going to get a, because what belongs to Islam. Okay, so just, tell me the area. What is it, a book or who knows what, So I'll give you a few on that. So again, I don't want my funny guys telling me, where are these ideas expressed? I think they're in the DMV booklet at the DMV where you learn how to get your license. Very funny, guys. I've heard it all, or maybe I haven't. Okay, so that should give you time on that, right? All right, let me grab the eraser. Repeating where Islam's basic ideas expressed. So, like I said before, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay. All right, back to the material. Okay, we ended up here on the bottom, Eastern peoples. All right, so let me make sure my paperwork matches up here. Arabia in Muhammad's day. The Jews and Christians with whom Muhammad had contact in Mecca undoubtedly influenced the strict monotheism of Islam. So again, when these religions predate the new Islam of the time, of course they're going to influence, right? They're well established. And they mentioned a word here, monotheism, which means you believe in only one God. And these religions, they're all the same in that aspect. Christians believe in one God. Muslims believe in one God, Allah, and the Jewish people believe in one God. Other religions like the Romans, they believed in many gods. The ancient Greeks believed in many gods. So that's what they mean by monotheism. Many other aspects of the Muslim faith also derive, which means come from, in some degree from other religions. This isn't usually stated a lot, so this is interesting. Such as the regulations against eating pork and using stimulants. So if you're familiar at all with Islam, the most basic knowledge, most people know that it's forbidden to eat pork, right? But they're saying that where did this come from? Because as a Christian, you can eat pork, right? And then using stimulants that alter the God-given nature of man. So you should not have any type of drugs or stimulants because God has given you the nature that you have. You don't need anything else to, like a lot of actors, musicians, artists will play with drugs to try to enhance their creativity. Islam says, you already got that. It's given from God. But the Muslim creed is not just a collection of other previous beliefs by any means. It includes many elements that reflect or show the peculiar circumstances of Arabs and Arabia in the 7th century CE. So a lot of this stuff, material that came in there, was pertinent to that location, area of Arabia, and the circumstances or what was going on, how life was lived. So that's what, I mean, I guess that could be argued, by people now and say, well, that's for ancient people. Like a lot of people, argue with the Christian religion and say the Bible's for people from way back in the day. So interesting point. At that time, much of the interior of the Arabian Peninsula was barely inhabited, except for scattered oases. So inhabited, we've gone over that a million times, but means people live there. The Bedouin tribes that passed from one oasis to the next with their herds, which means a flock of animals, were continually at war with one another for water and pasture. The virtues most respected in this society were those of the warrior. Strict social and material equality, bravery, hardiness, loyalty, honor, and hospitality to strangers. The Arabs' religion before Muhammad, so they had a religion before Muhammad, involved a set of animistic beliefs, like I mentioned before, such as the important one centering on the Kaaba. See, again, a cubical stone shrine that contained the black stone. So again, animism, like I mentioned before, the mountain, the tree, the river, the stone. So here we have a stone. And remember, this is before Islam. Recall, which means remember, the animism means a conviction that objects such as rivers, trees, or stones possess spirits and spiritual qualities that have direct and potent, which means strong, impact on human lives. In the coastal towns, these beliefs coexisted side by side with the monotheistic beliefs of Judaism, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. That's a whole nother religion that was in the Middle East before Islam. A lot of Persian people still practice this. And I think it's the major element is fire in Zoroastrianism. There is evidence that belief in a principal creator deity or God also existed in Arabia before Muhammad, although such evidence is vague, which means unclear and indirect. Traditions that underscored social and economic equality were being cast aside in favor of materialistic values and social hierarchy. So before Islam came, these traditional values were being thrown away and people pursued materialistic values like we do here in the United States. Everything is about Gucci, Prada, and you name it. And then social hierarchy, which means status. You know, you don't want to be regular folk. You want to be a movie star. You want to be a rich person. So continuing, the cultural gap between town Arab and Bedouin had widened to such an extent that it threatened to become irrevocable, which means you cannot fix it. Worship at the Kaaba shrine, again, the stone, that had become linked to trade for the merchants of Mecca, who profited greatly from the many thousands of Arabs from the interior who made annual processions there during the month of Ramadan to worship tribal and clan idols that were housed in the shrine. From this moment, some scholars have interpreted Muhammad's religious message as the work of a reformer, someone who fixes things, a man who perceived many of the problems facing his people and responded to them. The verses of the Quran, excerpted in the Patterns of Belief box, contain many references to these problems and propose solutions. For example, the condition of women in pre-Muslim Arabia were apparently poor. A man could have as many wives as he wished, regardless of whether he could support them all. Women were practically powerless in legal matters. That's not good. And they had no control over the dowries in marriage. That's the amount. Cultures are different. Some cultures, the parents of the wife, the bride, pay the dowry, and some it's the parents of the groom. So I'm not sure. And they could not have custody over minor children after we're at the bottom. So, I got to give another question. Question 4. Pencil time. Okay, a little bit longer question, but you know what I say. The longer my question, the shorter your answers. There we go. Some scholars have interpreted Muhammad's message. Actually, can I sneak this in here? I missed a step here. There we go. Some scholars have interpreted Muhammad's religious message as what? So let me give you a few to get that. Okay, think you got that? Cool. With the eraser. Repeating, some scholars have interpreted Muhammad's religious message as what? Okay, that's done. Let me go back to the material. Now we're moving on to Arabia and Muhammad's day. The Jews and Christians with whom Muhammad had contact in Mecca undoubtedly influenced the strict monotheism. Oh, sorry about that. We ended this page. Sorry. We have to move on. We ended down here with the minor custody with the ladies. Remember, we'll repeat this. Women were practically powerless in the pre-Islamic Arabia and had no control over the dowries in marriage and could not have custody over minor children. So moving on. After if the husband died, they didn't really have power. That's really bad, strange, among other things. In his preaching, Muhammad took pains to change the situation and the attitude that lay behind it. In this way, he was an innovator, reacting against a tradition that he believed to be ill-founded. He imposed an absolute limit of 4 wives per man. So let me ask you, my funny guys, is 4 wives enough for you? Or are you upset that Muhammad put that down? You want to have more wives? I don't know. Although he made no restrictions on the number of a man's concubines, which are, how shall I say, lovers, there was no restriction. I guess you can have as many of those as you want until your wife finds out and then she kills you in your sleep. So if additional wives could not be supported equally, they were not permitted. Although Muhammad denied that women were equal to men, so he didn't believe women were equal to men, he made it clear that women were not mere servants of men, that they had some inherent rights as persons, wives and mothers, and that their honor and physical welfare needed protection by the men around them. The status of women in early Muslim teaching was relatively elevated. So a lot of people are not happy with the limits that Islam puts on women even today, but Muhammad lifted them a little bit higher than what they were used to before Islam came. It might actually have been higher and more firmly recognized than the status accorded to women in the medieval West, I guess at the time, as well as in rural Southern and Eastern Asia. Okay, let's move on to the jihad. One of the unique aspects of Islam is the jihad, the effort or war for the establishment of God's law on earth. Allah enjoined Muslims to fight against unbelief, both internal and external. The word jihad derives from the Arabic term jahada, which means to strive, to exert oneself to eradicate disbelief. Disbelief can arise within oneself in the form of doubt, as well as in the others. God commands the believer always to strive against doubt or the outright rejection of him. So taking part in a jihad is a way of fighting Satan. To take up the sword of God, Saif Allah, is the highest honor for a good Muslim. Dying in such an effort, whether through eradicating internal doubts or through external holy war, is a way of fulfilling one of God's commandments. So it assures one of a heavenly reward. So you fight in a jihad and you're going to go to heaven, you know. Aside from the salvation of one's soul, what was the earthly appeal of the jihad? So they're asking here, besides people obviously like, hey, that's great if I fight and die for God, you know, Allah, I'll go to heaven. But what's the earthly appeal here? You know, it seems to have been based on several aspects of Arabic culture. The desert Bedouins were already a warlike people. accustomed to continual violence in the struggle for water and pasture. Much evidence also indicates that they faced an economic crisis at the time of Muhammad, namely a severe overpopulation problem that overwhelmed the available sparse or limited resources. Under such conditions, many people were willing to risk their lives for the possibility of a better future. There you go. There's your answer. You know, if we can go through this, and then if we survive, because if we die, okay, we'll go to heaven. But if we survive, we can have a better future. And that's a good reward for us here on earth. It is likely that many of those who participated in the early conquests saw Muhammad as a successful war leader, as much or as well as a religious prophet. So they saw him as a warrior, not only a religious prophet. So we're at the bottom. So, I have a question. Question 5. Oh, back to the simple questions. Yay. Simple Simon. What is the meaning of Islam's jihad? Just finished explaining this. So please give me the answer. What is the meaning of Islam's jihad? So let me give you a few on that. Okay, we doing good on that? You sure? You ready to wrap that question 5 up and throw it away? Good deal. Okie dokie. Back to the eraser. Bim bomba. What is the meaning of Islam's jihad? I don't want any silly guys saying jihad. Are we talking about jam? Toast? No. Right? All right, back to the material. Okay, so we ended here. Like I said, the people who are participated in the early conquests of other empires, I guess it's the Persian was one. They saw Muhammad as a successful war leader, as much or as well as a religious prophet. Okay, now we're going to go into the Quran. Okay. Okay, remember what the Quran is. It's the holy book. The Quran is not only the Bible of the Muslims, but also an elaborate and poetic code of daily conduct, which means a daily code or way, a structure of how to live your life. It is a compilation, like the Christian and Jewish Bibles, formed from the memory of Muhammad's associates, or his words and instructions after the prophet's death. As the literal word of God, the Holy Book is held by all devout Muslims to be the unfailing source of wisdom, which, if adapted to the changing realities of daily life, can be usable in the 21st century as it was in the 7th when it was written. So this would be the argument to come back against modern people who say, like they fight against the Christian Bible and say, man, that's for old Jewish ancient times, man, that ain't for now. And the people that could fight against the Quran and say the same thing, that's for the old Arabic Medina people, it says here, it can be just as usable in the 21st century, this book, as it was in the 7th when it was written. Many of its verses have formed the basis of law in Muslim countries. Again, I stated earlier, like in Iran, the law comes from the Quran. Now, translating into every major language, the Quran was long available only in Arabic, one of the world's most poetic and subtle languages. The circumstances both helped and hindered the religion's eventual spread. Some excerpts follow. So these are excerpts from the Quran explaining certain things. The jihad. So fight in the cause of God against those who fight against you, but do not begin hostilities. Surely God loves not the aggressors. Once they start the fighting, kill them wherever you meet them and drive them out where they have driven you out. For aggression is more heinous than killing. But fight them until all aggression ceases and religion is professed. So fight them until all the aggression has stopped and religion is talked about by all for the pleasure of God alone. If they desist, which means if they stop, then the mindful, for you to be mindful, and that no retaliation is permissible except against the aggressor. So people still fighting, you can kill them. Do not account those who are slain in the cause of God as dead. So people who died fighting for God in this jihad, don't call them as dead people. Indeed, they are living in the presence of their Lord, so they've gone to heaven and are provided for. They are jubilant, which means very happy, and rejoice for those who have not yet joined them. They rejoice at the favor of God and his bounty, which means treasure, and at the realization that God suffers not the reward of the faithful to be lost. Okay, another excerpt is piety and charity. There is no piety in turning your faces towards the east or the west, but he is pious who believe in God and the last day and the angels and the scriptures and the prophets, who for the love of God disperses his wealth to his kindred and to the orphans and the needy and the wayfarer and those who ask, and for ransoming. That's an interesting word there. I wonder how that's explained. Those who expend their wealth for the cause of God and never follow what they have laid out with reproaches or harm shall have their reward with the Lord. No fear shall come upon them, neither shall they be put to grief. So they won't even suffer grief. A kind of speech and forgiveness, a kind speech and forgiveness is better than alms followed by injury. So it's saying if you're kind in your words and you forgive, it's better than giving money and then causing injury. Give to the orphans for their property. Substitute not worthless things of your own for their valuable ones, and devour not the property, which means don't attackingly take it after adding it to your own, for this is a great crime. Okay, we're at the bottom of the page, so gotta throw me a question in there, right? Question 6. So question 6 is as follows. The Quran is what two things to Muslims? Again, this is practice for your midterm or even your final. Tell me the two things. Don't just give me one answer. So let me give you a minute on that. Okay, you think you got a handle on that? All right, let me get the eraser. Repeating the Quran is what two things to the Muslims? So hopefully you'll give me two answers. You just don't give me one. Okay. Thank you, folks. That is erased. Let's go back to the material. So we ended here on the bottom. It's a great crime. There's going to be some more excerpts that we're going to get into next. Okay. Read the whole bottom of this information about the Quran. I think it's quite important. All right, so here we go. Now they're going to talk about society and economy from the Quran. Ye may divorce your wives twice. Isn't once enough? I don't understand. But anyway, keep them honorably or put them away with kindness. But it is not allowed you to appropriate to yourselves any of what you have once given them, which means, I guess, what you gave them, you're not supposed to take back. It's theirs now. No blame shall attach to either of you for what the wife shall herself give for her redemption from the marriage bond. So you're not to blame her and she's not to blame you in this divorce, right? Which is not what happens in the United States as of the present time. Oh, my ex-husband was garbagey and he wouldn't give me what I wanted and I was unhappy. So I'm going to take all I can from him. This is quite different. Okay, here we go. This might upset some ladies, but this is what Muhammad believed. Men are superior to women on account of the qualities with which God had gifted the one above the other. So this is based on the fact that God gave more gifts or more important gifts to men than women. And on account of the outlay they make from their substance for them. Okay, virtuous women. Okay, so has this been lost in time? Virtuous women was very common when I was growing up. You know, a lot of ladies, I'm a virtuous woman. I was a kid. Like, what does that mean? You play a lot of basketball? So virtuous women do not, in the span of a certain years, take a lot of lovers or break up with a lot of men, have a lot of sexual partners. They're very virtuous. They probably at this time, you're only going to have sex with who you marry with. But when I was a young guy, I don't hear it anymore, but women would say, I do not have sex with just any man. I have to be in love with him, right? So that's where the virtuous comes from. Virtuous women are obedient, careful, and during the husband's absence, because God hath them been careful. So God has been careful with them. But chide those whose obstinacy you have caused to dread. Remove them into beds apart and whip them. Oh my God. So there you go. You can whip the wife. It's a bad punishment, but if they did bad things. Wow. I didn't know about that. But if they are obedient to you, husband, then seek not occasion to abuse them. So do not hurt your wives if they are obedient to you and good. So obedient might be another thing. If you're a feminist, you might not like, right? At that time, if a husband said, hey, I want you to do something, the wife just said, okay. Now, an American wife might say, shut up, do it yourself, you pig, or what have you. That's not obedient, right? So again, different times, different cultures, different religions. All right. Now, what does the Quran believe about Christians and Jews? Because again, those religions came before Islam came into being. Verily, those who believe and those who follow the Jewish religion and the Christians, whoever of these believeth in God and the last day and does that which is right shall have their reward with the Lord. Fear shall not come upon them, neither shall they be grieved. That's interesting. So we don't want to allow them to have fear, but kind of like saying, leave them alone. But when they die, you will not grieve over them. You will not say, oh, how sad that my friend who's a Christian. So it's interesting. Don't grieve over them. Like, just let them, die. We believe in God and what has been sent down to us and what is sent down to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and their descendants, and what was given Moses, Jesus, and the prophets by their Lord. We do not differentiate between them and are committed to live at peace with him. Analyze and interpret. This is a nice picture here. Does some of this excerpt remind you of the laws of Manu? Okay, so that's a time before the Islamic. What similarities are most prominent? Note the fine line walked by the Quran between self-defense and aggressive war. What in the background of the Bedouin might have made close distinction necessary. So this is the stone we talked about earlier, the big black stone. It's inside of this, right? This is the Kaaba in Mecca. So people come to see it, to worship it. And there it is. Okay. So again, we're at the bottom. So that means I got to get another question. Question 7. So, do I have a short question for you? Yes. Okay, here's a question. What hindered the spread of Islam? So hindering means to slow something down, right? Unnecessarily, right? If, I'm in college and I want to graduate from college and get good grades. If I spend a lot of time partying with my friends and getting drunk and going to clubs, that's going to slow me down or maybe even ultimately stop me from my goal of getting high grades and graduating college, right? So you don't want things that hinder you. So we're talking about what hindered or slowed down the spread of Islam. And that means the spread all over the world. Now, for this answer, you would have to pay really good attention. I mean, pay really good attention. It's there, but it's one of those things that I read and you saw. And if you just, if students just sit here and I talk and they just kind of go, doobie doobie, scooby dooby, and don't pay attention, they'll probably miss it. So if you follow along word by word as I read, you'll see it. So let me give you a minute to get the answer on that. I hope you're able to find that. Okay, let me go for that eraser. 7, repeating what hindered or slowed down the spread of Islam. Okay, all right, back to the material. Okay, so again, we ended with this photo in Mecca, where people take the yearly trip as a pilgrimage. All right, so now we're gonna move off into the era of the rightly guided caliphs, 1632 through 1661. Muhammad's unexpected death necessitated choosing another leader if the Muslim community was going to avoid falling apart. You always need a leader. His closest followers at Medina argued over his choice, or this choice. Some believed that leadership should fall to a close family member, in particular his cousin and son-in-law Ali, others thinking that it should be the best qualified, the person who was closest to the Prophet and who best represented his teaching. They decided on Abu Bakr, Muhammad's closest friend, his father-in-law, and one of his first converts. Unsure what Abu Bakr's exact status was, most simply addressed him as Khalifat or Ar-Wasul Allah, meaning deputy of God's messenger. Although the title was humble in origin and meaning, the term stuck as Caliph. And I'm sure many people have heard this in the present day. Abu Bakr was elected to a committee of his closest associates, as were the next 3 caliphs, soon after fighting a brief war to reunite the Muslims. Abu Bakr, 1632 to 1634, died. So 2 years as caliph, that's it. It's a rough time. And he was succeeded by a General Umar, who served 10 years, 634 to 644, who ruled over Islam for 10 years. Umar was a real founder of the early Muslim empire. His Arab armies pushed deep into North Africa, conquering, don't forget that, Egypt by 642. At the same time, he invaded Persia and the Byzantine Empire territory in the Eastern Mediterranean. By the time of Umar's death in 644, mounted Arab raiders were penetrating as far west as India, like we learned last week. All right. Again, it's up to you to remember, is that North or South India? With such rapid expansion, administration of this vast and growing empire had to be done on an ad hoc basis, which is kind of like step by step. The system Umar devised was brilliant at first, but proved troublesome in the longer term. As the Arab tribesmen poured onto one conquered land after another, the Caliph created a system of rule called Arab Islamic theocracy. It was an Islamic theocracy because, in theory at least, God's commands, as preserved through the Quran, provided the principles by which the Caliph and his lieutenants ruled. Ethnically, it was Arab because the Caliph kept the conquering Arabs segregated from the vanquished in fortified encampments, so they did not mix with the conquered people. To maintain this system, the Caliph pensioned the Arab tribes out of booty taken in battle, and from a special poll tax, jizya, that was collected from non-Muslim subjected people. So if you were captured by the Muslims, you had to pay a tax. This stunningly rapid expansion came to a halt because of a civil war in 656 for mastery within the Muslim world, which brought Ali, husband of Fatima and Muhammad's son-in-law, to the fore, or to the front. Ali was the last Orthodox caliph for a long time. His assassination by a dissident in 661 marked the end of the first phase of Muslim expansion. So, I got a question there. Because we's at the bottom. Oops, I went back to the material. I guess I'm getting tired. Okay. Whiteboard. Pencil. Question 8. All right. Who was the real founder of the Muslim empire? Just went over that. Was it Muhammad? I don't know. Just take a thought if you made a note, and let me give you a few minutes on that. Just give me one name. That's it. If you believe me, that's my hint to you that it was Muhammad, then write that down. Okay? All right. Eraser time. Hey, who was the real founder of the Muslim empire? Don't say KFC Haraboji. Okay? Don't say that. Or Ronald McDonald. Okay, back to the material. And we ended down here, mark the end of the first phase of Muslim expansion. Now we move on to the conversion to Islam. So people get converted. Contrary to widespread Christian notions, Islam normally did not force conversions. In fact, after the first few years of conquest, the Arab leaders came to realize the disadvantages of mass conversion of the conquered and discouraged it. By the time of the Umayyads, conversion was looked on as a special allowance to deserving non-Muslims, only deserving non-Muslims, especially those who had something to offer the conquerors in the way of talents, wealth, or domestic and international prestige. That sounds the way a lot of the modern immigration is. Countries usually only want people that are scientists, doctors, or you can buy your citizenship with thousands of dollars. So people who can add money to the economy, people that can further science and business, that's what most of the legal immigration is hooked into. No effort was made to convert the peasants. See, they didn't want to convert the poor people, uneducated, or the urban masses, all the city people, maybe homeless, I don't know. Life in the villages went on as before, with the peasants paying their rents and taxes or giving their labor to the new lords, just as they had to their old rulers. When and if they converted, it was because of the genuine appeal of Islam as a faith, as well as specific local circumstances, rather than from pressure from above. Centuries passed before the peasants of Persia and Turkey accepted Islam. In Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt, whole villages remained loyal to their Christian beliefs during 10 centuries of Muslim rule. Wow, 1,000 years. Intermarriage between a Muslim and a practicing non-Muslim were strictly prohibited. No go, sir. No, cannot do. This restriction was a result of Quranic injunctions that Muslims marry Muslims. Moreover, Muslims had restricted social contact with non-Muslims. Although the two groups did mix together in business transactions, administrative work, or even at times intellectual and cultural exchange, especially in Spain, the Muslims did not view all non-Muslims the same. Instead, they were categorized according to what the Quran and Arab tradition taught about the possession of spiritual truth. So here we go. This is interesting. You should pay attention to this. The Jews and Christians were considered meritorious. So they're of a higher level. They're of merit because both shared the same basic beliefs in the one God, and like Islam and his prophets, such as Abraham and Jesus of Nazareth, that Islam did. So they were held in the highest esteem of the non-Muslims, but still not an equal. The Zoroastrians were viewed in much the same way. Again, that's the religion that was there before Islam, like in Iran. The Zoroastrians viewed much in the same way. All three were classified as dhimis, or peoples of the book, and were thought to have risen above what Muslims regarded as their superstitions of their many subject people. So a lot of people that still believed in the animism or even the devil or pagan things, they were considered the lowest of the low. The dhimis were not taxed as severely as pagans were. See, there's the word pagan. And they had legal and business rights that were denied to others. Restrictions on dhimis were generally not severe. And in many places, evidence shows that they prospered. They could worship as they please, so they could have their churches and synagogues. Provided that they observe limitations placed on the public displays of belief and avoid proselytizing. So you cannot say anything against the Islamic faith, and you're not supposed to go out there and like what they do here in the United States. People go on the corner and with a loudspeaker and start talking about God. They weren't allowed to do that. And they elected their own community leaders. Their position was normally better than that of Jews or Muslims under a contemporary Christian rule, although there were instances of persecution in later centuries. That means people were arrested and bad things happened to them. So I'm at the bottom. Let me get into this. Whiteboard, pencil, question 9. Straightforward question. So I just covered this. What kind of people did Muslims want to convert? There was a group that didn't want to and a group they did. So let me give you a few to put that answer down. So you know we're on question 9, so everybody knows we're about done here. Just give it a few. We'll be set. All right, let me get that eraser. Repeating, what kind of people did Muslims want to convert? Did they want to convert basketball players, musicians, clowns, circus people? What kind of people did Muslims want to convert? Okay, that's done. Go back to the new share. All right. So we have here on the bottom. Oh, that's the end of my slideshow. Oh dear. So I only gave you 9 questions. Wow. Good deal. But you know, I can slide another question in there. I can do it. Give me a second. All right. I can slide. It's an easy peasy one, so don't worry. Yeah, we don't have to read anymore, so be happy about that. I can slide at number 10. And it's in the same category, so we can do it. And that's it for the day. Oops. Do this correctly. Whoops, supposed to be a question mark there. All right. Again, no more reading. Who did the Muslims call Dhimis? Right? Who were these? What was this group of people? So let me give you a few to get that down. Okay, so you should have enough time to have answered that. So let me get the eraser. Repeating your last question for the day, we've done all our reading. Who did the Muslims call Dhimis? Okay, that's pretty easy. What group of people were these? All right. All right. Let me go back here. I guess let me stop sharing. Okay. Oh, good deal. Okay, so we're done for this week. And good thing this kept up recording because I was going on for a long time. So I shall see you next week. Okay. Thank you much. Bye-bye.